Je pense à l'Algérie. Je pense à nos 20 ans.
You think I would stop singing that song? You grandkids will be singing Strange Fruit.
Separated only by the passage of time.
Why are you punishing me like this? For heaven's sake!
Welcome to today's cinema show. I'm joined virtually by our film critic, Lisa Nesselson. Hello, Lisa. You're starting with one of the films that was supposed to be shown at the 2020 Cannes Film Festival that was cancelled due to COVID. Des Hommes, or Homefront in English, was directed by Belgium's Luca Belvaux and with Gérard Depardieu in the lead role. It's a story about the personal repercussions on a group of French soldiers who were conscripted to fight in Algeria in the 1950s. Tell us more.
Well, this is an ambitious adaptation of a recent novel, and it benefits from a powerhouse cast. Given that France sent 1.5 million soldiers to Algeria over the years in the name of what wasn't acknowledged to have been a war until the turn of the last century, it's not surprising that there's lingering trauma in the national psyche. Heartache and regret lend themselves to literature and cinema. Luca Belvaux is usually a wonderful director, but this movie, full of flashbacks in which younger actors play the adults, played by Gérard Depardieu and Jean-Pierre Daroussin, is kind of hard to follow. The military service that shattered these men's lives took place at a time when France was a primarily rural country. A high percentage of soldiers would never previously have left their own community or their own region. So to be shipped to a part of North Africa that was technically part of France, but didn't necessarily wish to be, without any context except that it was the patriotic thing to do, was bound to be confusing. Filmmaker Bernard Stora has said that if a young man left on a 3-year tour of duty in, say, 1957 and returned in 1960, it would seem as if France had switched from black and white to color.
Interesting reflection there on the notion of time. Let's hear from director Luca Belvaux on how the Algerian War is a sensitive topic to depict in film.
The Algerian War is kind of like a family secret because you have shame, suffering, denial, silence. The government as well as citizens don't want to talk about it anymore. It's because we don't want to know that France used napalm, that we deported entire populations, not in concentration camps, or rather extermination camps, but they were retention camps, where we left people 500 kilometers from where they lived for years and years.
Pendant des années, des années, des années.
Ça, on peut pas le raconter. Parce qu'il n'y a pas de mots pour raconter ça. Il n'y a pas de mots. On peut pas le dire. On peut même pas l'imaginer. Les hommes avaient fait ça.
Now, this is a guy's tale through and through, but Catherine Fro, who plays the sister of Depardieu's bitter character, goes through a box of letters sent back from Algeria, and there's a lot of voiceover. Decades later, reads of an atrocity that the letter writer can't believe any human could bring himself to commit. The voice marvels aghast at the undeniable reality that this was indeed des hommes, that is to say, men, who perpetrated such needless horror.
Indeed, Lisa. Now, out this week in France is a new biopic on Billie Holiday. Singer-turned-actress Andra Day won a Golden Globe for her portrayal in the leading role of the blues singer. The film shines a light on the icon's political activism and the government's persecution that followed. Lisa, it's called The United States versus Billie Holiday.
Well, you know, in the 1960s on posters and stuff, there was a popular slogan that said, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. The title of this movie, as in a court case, is not an exaggeration. The story takes place mostly in the 1940s and 50s, and black folks were expected to stay in their place. Billie Holiday was a talented vocalist who intended to live her life as she saw fit. Sex and drugs and rock and roll, except the rock and roll in that equation was the blues blues and jazz, of which she was a consummate master. That voice, that material, and that delivery. The film begins with on-screen words stating that in 1937, the U.S. Senate considered an anti-lynching bill, but it failed to pass. Lawmakers couldn't bring themselves to make stringing people up from tree branches for perceived transgressions a recognized federal crime. When Billie Holiday persisted in singing the absolutely chilling anthem, Strange Fruit, a wrenching description of the racially motivated and murderous practice of lynching, the government really did set out to destroy her.
All right, let's get a taste of the atmosphere in the United States versus Billie Holiday.
I'm being followed. I'm not gonna cower to no fence.
In the southern breeze.
She's made something of herself and you can't take it because she's strong, beautiful, and black.
Strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees.
So, Lisa, what's your take on the film?
Oh, I think it's terrific, involving and full of sad, important history worth revisiting. It's directed by Lee Daniels, who has a real flair for ensemble work and sort of florid situations. Andra Day as Lady Day does all her own singing, and everybody agrees that Day's performance is worth the price of admission. But others take issue with the way the story is told, contending it puts too much emphasis on a love interest who may really be an undercover agent who means her harm. The screenplay was inspired by a scholarly book by Johan Hari with the fetching title Chasing the Scream, the first and last days of the war on drugs. It tells the century-long history of drug criminalization, what we tend to call the war on drugs. Billie was a heroin user. If they couldn't get her to stop singing Strange Fruit, they could harass her, basically to death. This biopic argues for Holiday's rightful place as a civil rights activist as well as a stunningly gifted entertainer.
One to watch then, Lisa. Moving on to a film that's been relegated to streaming platforms in the US, Ireland, Australia and New Zealand, but is being released on the big screen here in France. The Amusement Park was made in 1973 and directed by the man known as the father of the zombie film. Tell us more.
George A. Romero, probably best known for having directed the cult classic Night of the Living Dead, was hired in the early 1970s by the Lutheran Society to make a public service film to educate people on why they should be more compassionate toward the elderly. The slogan, "Don't trust anybody over 30," would have been in full swing, and it was a time when age 50 was already considered dangerously close to geriatric and washed up. So the film was supposed to be against ageism, and it is. But it was shelved and never shown because it was too much of a horror film in the eyes of those who commissioned it. Romero's specialty was for blending gore with social commentary. The film was rediscovered after he died in 2017 and was recently restored by Indie Collect, a wonderful nonprofit organization headquartered in New York City that rescues and restores American independent films. Now, they've done a great job with this. The clothes and the hairdos are a real time capsule, and the movie's attitude is, well, not shy about socking across the idea that you may think your life is full of promise, but just wait until you're a geezer and society rejects you.
All right, let's take a look at the long-lost gem, the amusement park.
One of these times, the door will open in your life, and you will step into the amusement park.
No, it's fun. You'll like it. You'll really like it.
Full of hope, anticipation for the future, and curiosity for what you will find there. The man in the amusement park is a mirror image of yourself.
Presumably, Lisa, a French appreciation for genre films helps explain why this 52-minute film got a big screen release.
I think you're right about that. The French reviews I've seen have been thoughtful and appreciative. It's not that often you get to see a bonus film by a director who's no longer with us. This is a minor event, but an event all the same.
And finally, one festival is marking World Environment Day by re-releasing movies that won its 2015 and 29 editions, 2 years when organisers focused on climate change. Lisa, what makes the Mobile Film Festival so unique?
Well, all of the submissions have to follow the same basic but challenging rules. One mobile phone, 1 minute, one film addressing a specific annual theme. The winners in the climate editions come from France, from Iran, from India, among other places, because if there's anything any of us inhabiting planet Earth have in common, it's that hardly anybody is taking global warming as seriously as the topic demands. You can watch dozens of entries and the winners online. And for me, it was a switch from grumbling at my neighbors who still don't understand that glass bottles go in the glass recycling receptacle and that you can compost a dead plant, but you can't recycle it. It's tiresome to be reminded that humanity is probably doomed every time I take out the garbage. There is a bit of irony here in that streaming moving images is horrible for the planet because streaming heats up computer servers. So whenever it's an option, it's far better to download a film than stream it, or even better, go and see it at the cinema.
Good to know. Thank you so much, Lisa, for being with us. And thank you for watching. We'll leave you with Anti-Human by Vinamra Pancharya. Remember our websites. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.